In the early hours of August 13, 2018, a tragedy unfolded in Frederick, Colorado, where Christopher Lee Watts, a seemingly ordinary oilfield operator, committed unspeakable acts that shattered a family and haunted a community. In a moment of rage, he murdered his pregnant wife, Shanann, by strangulation, extinguishing the light of a beloved mother and wife. As the sun rose, his darkness extended to his two innocent daughters, Bella and Celeste, whom he suffocated in a heart-wrenching act, silencing their laughter forever. What made him commit such a horrific crime? And what might have motivated him? This is the story of Watts' family. Christopher Lee Watts and Shanann Catherine Rzucek were both from North Carolina. Christopher from the town of Spring Lake and Shanann from Aberdeen. Their paths crossed in 2010, and a bond quickly formed between them. On November 3, 2012, they married in Mecklenburg County, beginning a life together filled with hopes and dreams. Over the next few years, their family grew. They welcomed two beautiful daughters into their lives. Bella Marie Watts, born on December 17, 2013, and Celeste Catherine, affectionately called Cece, born on July 17, 2015. The family was filled with joy as they built their world around their little girls. At the time of her death, Shanann was 15 weeks pregnant with a son. They had already chosen a name for him, Nico, adding another layer of excitement to their growing family. But despite their outwardly happy life, things would take a tragic turn, and their story would end in a way no one could have imagined. It was around 1:48 a.m. on Monday, August 13, 2018, when Shanann Watts returned home from a business trip to Arizona. She was driven by her friend and colleague, Nicole Utoft Atkinson, who had accompanied her on the journey. Over the weekend, Chris Watts had been home with their two daughters, Bella and Cece, but now Shanann was back, ready to settle in after her trip. But by the afternoon, something was terribly wrong. Shanann had missed an important obstetrics appointment, hadn't responded to text messages, and skipped a business meeting. Nicole, growing increasingly concerned, decided to check on her friend. At around 12:10 p.m., she arrived at the Watts family home, but no one answered the door. Knocking and ringing the doorbell went unanswered. Panic set in, and Nicole reached out to Christopher, who was at work, and then called the Frederick Police Department. A police officer arrived at the house just after 1:40 p.m. to perform a welfare check. Christopher, visibly distressed, gave the officer permission to search the home. Inside, the officer found the family dog, unharmed, but there was no sign of Shanann or the girls. The search turned up Shanann's purse, still containing her keys and medicine. But the most chilling discovery was yet to come. Her phone was found later, hidden between the cushions of the family couch, and her car, still holding the girls' car seats, sat parked in the garage. Even more troubling was the discovery of Shanann's wedding ring, left behind on the bedside table. As the day went on, the investigation grew more intense. The FBI and Colorado Bureau of Investigation joined the search the following day, but Christopher remained adamant that he had no idea where his family could be. He said he hadn't seen Shanann since he left for work the morning before around 5:15 a.m. In an emotional public plea, he spoke to news cameras outside their home, asking for the safe return of his wife and daughters. As he spoke, the hum of search dogs could be heard in the background, scouring the property in search of any trace of Shanann and the girls. The mystery deepened, and the town of Frederick was gripped by the unsettling question, where had the Watts family gone? On August 15, 2018, a desperate search began for Shanann Watts and her two young daughters, Bella and Celeste. The FBI soon joined the local authorities, intensifying the hunt for the missing family. In the midst of this turmoil, Chris Watts, Shanann's husband, was subjected to a polygraph test. It was a test he would fail, and it marked a turning point in the investigation. Overcome with guilt, Chris eventually confessed to his father, Ronnie, and then to the authorities. He claimed that he had killed Shanann in a fit of rage, but his story was troubling. He alleged that he found Shanann smothering their daughters, and driven by anger, he strangled her. In a chilling twist, he led investigators to the Anadarko oil field where he worked, to reveal the locations of their bodies. On August 16th, investigators arrived at the oil field, guided by Chris's directions. The scene was harrowing. Bella and Celeste's bodies were discovered in crude oil storage tanks while Shanann was buried in a shallow grave nearby. The medical examiner would reveal the shocking details. Bella had scratches on her body from being forced through a narrow hatch, a stark reminder of the horrific events that had transpired. As the days unfolded, Chris was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, as well as unlawful termination of a pregnancy and tampering with a deceased human body. His life unraveled quickly. He was fired from his job at Anadarko and denied bail during his initial court appearance. A subsequent hearing set his bail at a staggering $5 million. The investigation continued to reveal more disturbing evidence. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera captured Chris just hours after the murders, loading a gas can into his truck and backing it into the garage. This footage contradicted his claims that Shanann and the girls had left the house that day. The case attracted significant media attention, with discussions around the phenomenon of family annihilation, crimes where one family member murders the rest of the family. Former FBI profiler Candace DeLong noted the rarity of such cases, as family annihilators typically take their own lives afterward. Chris Watts, however, claimed he had contemplated suicide out of guilt. But the question was, why would a loving mother try to strangle her own children? Many questions raised. Was it true? Was Chris lying? Or was there something deeper, something more tragic at play? Chris Watts had always projected the image of the perfect family. To the outside world, he and his wife, Shanann, were a picture of happiness, and from the photos on social media, their lives appeared to be filled with joy, love, and success. Yet, behind closed doors, things were far from perfect. Chris had been living a life of quiet discontent. His marriage was strained, though they kept up appearances. Shanann, strong and independent, had been successful in her career, but there was a tension between them that grew over time. He wanted something different, something that would free him from the weight of expectations and responsibilities. But he didn't know how to express it, didn't know how to talk about it. It started as a casual flirtation, a colleague at work, a woman who seemed to understand him in ways his wife couldn't. They connected on a deeper level, a connection that began to overshadow everything else in his life. The more he spent time with her, the more Chris began to feel alive again. The more he started to question everything about his marriage, his family, and his role in it all. But as his feelings for this other woman deepened, his love for Shanann began to fade. The pressure built, a quiet storm inside of him, swirling and threatening to consume everything. He wanted to leave. He wanted freedom, but he didn't know how. It was February 18, 2024, when Chris Watts, now serving his life sentence in a Wisconsin prison, gave an unsettling and chilling interview to police. In the years since his conviction for the brutal murders of his wife, Shanann, and their 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste, Chris had reportedly found religion. In the solitude of his incarceration, a deep transformation, or perhaps a search for redemption, had begun. He agreed to speak about the horrific acts he had committed, offering a glimpse into the mind of a man whose life had once been seemingly perfect before it all crumbled in a wave of betrayal, deception, and violence. The interview revealed more of the story that had horrified the nation in 2018. Watts spoke candidly about the events leading up to that fateful day. But it wasn't just the cold confession that stunned listeners. It was the disturbing details that came to light. Chris had been living a double life, caught in an affair with a coworker, Nicole Kessinger, a 30-year-old woman who believed he was in the process of divorcing Shanann. Watts's attorney, Stephen Lambert, who later went on Dr. Phil to discuss the interview, explained that the murder of Shanann was sparked by a confession that would turn everything upside down. Watts had told Shanann that he was having an affair and that he wanted a divorce, effectively shattering their marriage in a single moment. Lambert's account painted a horrifying picture. Chris, in his rage and fear, strangled Shanann to death after revealing the truth. The act was a moment of both rage and cold calculation, his escape from a life he no longer wanted. Watts' confession, now public, added further terror to the already incomprehensible nature of the crime. But it didn't end there. What came next was equally chilling. According to Lambert, Watt's 4-year-old daughter Bella had witnessed her father preparing to move Shanann's body. In a twisted lie meant to conceal his actions, Chris told Bella, "Mommy is sick. We need to take her to the hospital to make her better." Bella, still innocent and trusting, could not have understood the full extent of the horror unfolding around her. Once he had the girls in his truck, Watts took them to the remote oil fields where he worked. There, he smothered them, one after the other, taking their lives as easily as if they were obstacles to his freedom. He then buried their small, lifeless bodies in oil drums, a final, monstrous act to sever the ties that bound him to the family he had just annihilated. The details of Watts's actions, as revealed in the interview and Stephen Lambert's statements, underscored the utter depravity of his crime. Watts had not only murdered his wife and children, but had woven a web of lies that misled his family, his mistress, and the world. The psychological weight of his lies and his acts of violence painted a chilling portrait of a man who believed he could escape the consequences of his actions. So this was the sad story of Watts' family. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe.